The producers of Failure is Not an Option.
I'm Gene Kranz. I was the writer of the book Failure is Not an Option and one of the members of the flight control team.
Hi, I'm Tony Bacon. I edited the program and was given a co-producer credit as well for involvement.
From right here on the ground.
We had to pull mission.
Gene, we started this whole thing because you started a book. How'd you get started on the book?
They are the men of
I had spent almost 40 years in aviation and space, and I believe every person who lived through the era of the 50s, 60s, and 70s felt that we were a participant in a great time in history, and I wanted to tell the story as we lived it and the story of my people.
Well, I think you did a great job in the book, especially giving the spotlight to all the different people on the team. Were you worried when we took your baby and started to mess with it? Not just in terms of his work, we do that other places, but in terms of
problem. And, we hear this in debriefing, and it's just like a big joke.
You know, it's interesting. This is the one moment in the film where we single out one particular controller, not just in terms of his work, we do that other places, but in terms of praise. And I was not sure how that would go over, Gene. Were you comfortable with that?
Oh, I was very comfortable with that thing. Every controller earns his spurs in the business. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the main control room. And I think Jerry stated very well, John Aaron was one of the most respected controllers we ever had in the business. And it didn't start in Apollo. It really started back in Gemini. I had him in my first, actually second mission as flight director, when we had to work with a very bulky fuel cell, and I was very glad to have him in my team.
I think, Tony, one of our fears in the beginning as filmmakers was, how are we going to make these engineers who all have similar crew cuts and white shirts and ties into individual personalities? And I think that it was a little rough going at first. Eventually, by the end, I think Carl Lindell at the History Channel agreed. He said, okay, I feel like you've got a cast of characters now, a group of personalities that I know and I care about.
Well, this was interesting because when you did the Hollywood release, when we were out there, one of the reporters asked you, how are you going to make engineers appear interesting?
Right.
I thought your answer was right on track.
Well, thank you, Gene. Now, this is really... this is the moment that lives forever. Houston, we've had a problem.
Yeah, one of the things, and Jim Lovell mentions this, he and I speak frequently together. It took me, I went through 3 different phases, about 5 minutes in duration from the time Lovell reported, hey, Houston, we got a problem. I had 2 electrical glitches earlier in the shift. So as soon as we had this, I immediately thought, we got a minor electrical problem, we'll solve it, we'll get on track. That lasted for about 5 minutes. Then one of my controllers reminded me that says, they said they had a pretty big bang associated with this. And I'm seeing a lot of thruster activity, and we seemed that several of the valves had been closed. Then I got into the tread lightly lest you run into trouble. About the time Jim Lovell called down from the spacecraft, which is about 15 minutes later, he says, hey, Houston, I believe we're venting something. We're venting our oxygen. All of a sudden, this now became a matter of survival, and fighter pilots in my day used the term looking into the eyes of a tiger. And this is the stark and the very lonely feeling that you get when the only thought in your mind is survival. And in this case, it's the crew's survival. And I think this then set a different frame of mind, and then we started working the problem. We're behind the power curve in the early minutes.
One of the most fascinating things for me was Tony and I pulled out the flight director's loop and listened to this whole episode in real time.
Oh, it's amazing.
Knowing that, and you guys didn't know what everyone now knows, how it turned out. And you can follow in the voices as the magnitude of the problem grows, and it starts to dawn on you that, we really don't have a handle on this. And yet, you stay calm.
So controlled.
Well, I remember the change came to me when the voice loops, I say, okay, I'll flight controller, settle down. Quit your guessing. Let's start working the problem. Bus A is still good. Don't do anything to screw it up. The lunar module's attached. We're going to use that as a lifeboat. Now, get me some backup people in here and get me more computing and communications. And that was when Lovell indicated that he had seen some vetting, and boy, that was the break point for me.
Yeah.
It's funny, on our drive into the studio this morning, there's a big billboard for an advertisement for a beer that said, "Houston, we have a party," because the Super Bowl is just thrown here. Great example about how this is such...
Right. You know, Tony and I really wanted to get across to the audience, and I'm really not sure we did, because television is a visual medium, but I felt like the analogy was, you know, the crew is off. In effect, they're driving in their car, and all we have to solve their problems is we have a replica of their dashboard in front of us, and it's just numbers and data. We don't have the sounds, the sensations. I mean, you guys were having to guess, or not guess, but figure out that they had even had an explosion. That wasn't even clear.
No, it wasn't clear initially, but it became clear pretty quick, and Jim said they're venting something. The thing, say a few words about the controllers. Each one of these people has grown up in the business. They wrote the textbooks for the work that they're doing. They wrote the procedures. They wrote the manuals. They wrote the flight plans. So these people are very well grounded in fact. At the same time, we develop an overall mission strategy we call mission rules, and we do that in an interactive fashion as a team. So by the time a mission comes along, the controllers know my bottom line, I know their bottom line, the crew knows it. So you basically have a contract between the players in very great detail for how